This is section 12-4000, the Florida GPS 4000 section. It's a right-of-way sign. We have a missing delineator at the beginning. We have our forward sign 500 feet ahead. This section's a JCP section with skewed joints. It's well marked with tape. We also have markings that we put as far as the number stationing. Not too much of interest on this section other than we have mat cracking that is predominantly along each wheel path, but I think it's just covered up by the oil stains. We put it throughout because there are still areas in the center here that you can see has some mat cracking, so we put it throughout section. It's consistent throughout the length. We do have spalling along the transverse joints, but not enough to count. There was a debate on whether or not, I mean, this obviously is considered a spall, but when we went up here to count this area, even though it's kind of worn, it's not really what I would consider chipped or frayed. I mean, this is more of a workmanship issue on the joint than an actual spall, at least by the mechanisms that we define. But according to definition, it's chipped. So that's kind of the open debate. The only real spalling was along the longitudinal joints. Like I said, the real spalling along this transverse, and this is what I consider real, is not enough to count for the joints. Because if that fraying actually counts, then we almost have an entire longitudinal joint in each side that would be considered spalled, along that center joint at least. Again, here at station 50, we have what I consider chip frayed spall, but then as you go up, you can see the area there that's chipped right there. And then if you go further up, you see that area there. You also see that area there, which is worn or frayed. Again, the longitudinal joint there in the center, you can see that. All these are pretty small, but we quantified them and then we'd figure out how we define whether or not these frayed areas count, because like I said, there was not enough of what I consider the real spalling to count, to quantify it, since it was like less than 0.3 meters. But here again, we've got that worn edge consistent almost throughout the length of this joint. Give you a closer up view. That's what we're talking about. Further out. I'm not sure exactly what we've historically done. By definition, I assume it would be considered spalling, but from what I understand of the mechanism of spalling, that's not spalling, that's a workmanship in the sawing of the joint. We do have staining along the mid lane. That's, I think, primarily from oil dripping from engines. All of these joints, the longitudinal and transverse, were well sealed joints. Again, these joints were skewed on this entire section. Coming up on station 2. This section will be used in the distressed workshop. 2 of our JCP sections will come from here. At 2+50, you can see spalling here in the longitudinal joint. Just to give you some scale there. We've the two sections we're getting from this, we're extending this one 100 feet for our workshop. It's got some additional interesting distresses. Station 3. And this is on US 92 eastbound or northbound. I'm not sure exactly how they oriented the map on this. It's a 4-lane divided. Has very good drainage, good cross slope. Here again, just before 3+75, we've got longitudinal spall. That's about 4 inches by 6 inches. And coming up on station 4, again, pretty much the same old thing. Again, real spalling. The only real joint damage out here was this section, as well as a little bit along the edge joint, not at this location, but I think a little further up that I didn't get in the video. And it's just basically where the guy sealing the longitudinal just didn't get it in the joint. But anyway, there's another spall. That's about 0.25 meters. (4+50). Again, I haven't really mentioned it, but except at the beginning, but this map cracking has been consistent pretty much throughout the length of this entire section. Here's another good example of the, is it a spall or is it just a crappy sawed joint? Here we've got these areas again where you know, it's frayed, and that's almost the half the length of this joint here at 4+70. But to me, that's not a spall. Again, just to give you some scale, what we're talking about. Some of these are 1 inch to 2 inches from the joint, but mostly looks like they're just worn. The only cracking we had was at this very end of the section. We've got 2 longitudinal cracks. This low severity from about 0.9 meters from the edge. Doesn't go all the way to the end there. And then we've got this one at about 2.3 or 4 meters from the edge stripe. And there you can see the amount of spalling that we've got along this crack. And then it goes to low severity, and then it hits the 500 before it picks back up to moderate again. And we continued to do the last 100 feet of this section. Our delineator post here at the end of section 12-4000 is damaged as well. We continued for the distress workshop to get this cracking, again longitudinal. And then we had this one slab before the core patching, this flexible patch, which has some distortions. There's some areas where it kind of looks a little bit faulted, but the cracking is faulted. The patching is on the concrete, so I don't think it's actually replaced any. Then you have this transverse cutting back into the longitudinal crack that's spalled up in areas. So that is section 12-4000, GPS section, Florida, US 92.